Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about the business of incarceration. Now, over the last decade, activists and advocacy groups have been hard at work shining a light on some of the worst parts of the prison systems here in the U.S. And trust me, there are a lot of problems to expose. Privatized prisons, which demand a very high percentage of full beds from the state. In other words, demanding the state arrest and convict enough people for them to justify owning a prison so that they can derive a profit. We also have corporate work camps, where large corporations pay prisons 20 cents an hour for laborers to do work assembling and creating their products, which the prison then pays the prisoners 10 to 12 cents an hour for their labor, and thus everybody makes money on the back of legalized state slavery. And because of all the work that has gone into shining a light on programs like this and other programs, prisons are slowly changing around the country. There is now less privatization. There are now fewer prisoners being pimped out to Fortune 500 companies. And while this has been good work and it has been progress, the unfortunate part of this is that people now turn a blind eye towards the mundane, the regular, the day in, day out operations and existence of state prison programs, and the fact that the state can use them as a cudgel to wield against anybody they choose to at any given time. So today, I would like to shine a light on a little something that's going on in his state prison program, just to remind you all that here in the United States of America, in the land of the free, not everybody is equal in those freedoms. Here we go. Alabama trying to use COVID relief funds for new prisons. Facing a Justice Department lawsuit over Alabama's notoriously violent prisons, state lawmakers on Monday began a special session on a $1.3 billion construction plan that would use federal pandemic relief funds to pay part of the cost of building massive new lockups. Governor Kay Ivey has touted the plan to build 3 new prisons and renovate others as a partial solution to the state's long-standing troubles in its prison system. The proposal would tap up to $400 million from the state share of American Rescue Plan funds to help pay for the construction. Quote, "It's the right thing to do," said Republican Senator Greg Albritton of the construction plan. Well, that certainly is a lot to unpack, so let me start at the top. Number 1, most states run tax negative, and what that means is that they rely on federal grant dollars to fund some, most, or all of certain programs within their state. Alabama is, yes, one of the many states that does not take in enough tax revenue comparative to the amount of money that they spend on all state services, which includes jails and prisons. So they generally write out a grant application, they get hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government, and then they decide how to appropriate that money throughout the entirety of their prison system. Now, it would seem that Alabama hasn't really been spending a lot of money, renovating or upkeeping their prisons or, giving a shit about the people who are in the prisons, whether they be employees or incarcerated citizens. Either way, Alabama has put this very low on their list of stuff, probably somewhere right underneath the amount of time, effort, and money that they've spent on combating COVID, which is why they have one of the highest rates in the nation and yet are looking to spend their COVID relief money on building more prisons rather than, public health measures to stop the spread of COVID. Quote, "We can't expect people to come to work when they don't know they're going to be able to leave work alive. We can't expect to house people, inmates, in conditions that are deteriorating and unhealthy. We've got to fix the problems. The prisons are falling in. But critics of the plan say the state's prison problems go beyond building conditions and urge the state to look to more sweeping sentencing reforms. They also argued that the state shouldn't be using pandemic relief dollars to build prisons. And again, Alabama has one of the highest rates in the nation of total positive cases of COVID per 100,000 residents, as well as percentage of their ICU being full. And yet, legislators in the state of Alabama are going to look at this as a boondoggle for them to just dip their toe in and take some money out. Hey, this is cool. We got some programs we want to fund. Yeah, you know, right after we kick back all of this money to local construction companies that we know who really support us, who would love to be able to get paid $400 million to build a prison so that we can cage more people like animals. The Alabama prison construction proposal calls for at least 3 new prisons, a prison in Elmore County with at least 4,000 beds, and enhanced space for medical and mental health care needs. Another prison with at least 4,000 beds in Escambia County, and a women's prison, as well as renovations to existing facilities. Now, of course, these have been problems for a long time, but they're just talking about spending money to fixing it now because the government put a big-ass pot of money in front of them and said, here. Republican legislative leaders said they are comfortable that they can legally use the funds because the American Rescue Plan, in addition to authorizing the dollars for economic and healthcare programs, says states can use the money to, quote, replace revenue loss during the pandemic to strengthen support for vital public services and help retain jobs. Ivy and GOP legislative leaders have said using the money will enable the state to essentially pay cash for part of the construction and avoid using state dollars as well as paying interest on a loan. The Department of Justice last year sued Alabama, saying the state prisons for men are, quote, riddled with prisoner-on-prisoner and guard-on-prisoner violence. Oh, and now we get to the crux of the situation. So, the Alabama state legislature has spent virtually no money upgrading their prisons for decades. Shit has spiraled out of control. Conditions continuously go from bad to worse to decrepit. And yet they vector federal funding towards police and other programs who are really nice to them and, endorse them during campaign season. But now the Department of Justice has apparently investigated them, found a whole bunch of violations, and said, here's a whole bunch of shit that you need to fix or else we're going to drop the hammer on you. Now, enter a bucket of free money, and the Alabama state legislatures go, well, I guess we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone on this. And thus, they're moving forward with the American Rescue Plan being a way to fund tons of prisons. Now, before I continue, I would like to take a look at this report from the Department of Justice and show you exactly how fucked up the prison system is in the state of Alabama, and then we can discuss if spending $400 million to build new buildings is really going to fix the problem that they have. In its report, the Justice Department detailed a chilling litany of incidences, including a prison guard beating a handcuffed prisoner in a medical unit while shouting, "I am the Reaper of Death, now say my name," as the prisoner begged the officer to kill him. It is the second time within 18 months that the Justice Department has accused Alabama of housing male inmates in unconstitutional conditions in a prison system considered one of the most understaffed and violent in the country. Quote, "Our investigation found reasonable cause to believe that there is a pattern or practice of using excessive force against prisoners in Alabama's prisons for men." Well, surely giving $400 million to half a dozen construction companies in the state of Alabama who all support the campaigns of currently seated representatives in the Republican Party, well, that will surely fix the problem of prison guards who think they are the Reaper of Death. In findings sent to the state, federal investigators wrote that officers have beaten, handcuffed, or restrained prisoners. Excessive force is sometimes used as retribution. The state prison system fails to investigate incidences, and the violence is so common that some officers consider it normal. Quote, ultimately, Alabama does not properly prevent and address unconstitutional uses of force in its prisons, fostering a culture where unlawful uses of force are common. And again, the state and the legislators that run it have decided that taking $400 million in COVID relief funding for their diseased, plague-riddled state would be better spent building new prisons, so that this way they can beat people in a much cleaner environment. Here are some other findings of the DOJ report. In September of 2019, a lieutenant at Ventress Prison lifted a handcuffed inmate off the ground and slammed him on a concrete floor several times, knocking him unconscious. In February of 2019, a sergeant at Elmore Prison beat 2 handcuffed prisoners suspected of retrieving contraband, striking one prisoner with a collapsible baton approximately 19 times on his head, legs, arms, back, and body. The sergeant who assaulted the prisoners later filed a false report about the incident, and the sergeant and 2 correctional officers pled guilty in federal court. Because supposedly they're part of the system and they're supposedly helping, yet they are actively committing crimes because, once again, the state of Alabama does not give a shit about its prison population or the people that work there. They solely care about it being a pain in their ass financially, yet still a way for them to actively control certain portions of the state population every once in a while when they feel like they're getting out of line. The announcement comes more than a year after the Justice Department released a scathing report that said male inmates face excessive inmate-on-inmate violence and sexual abuse in facilities that are not sanitary, safe, or secure. The department is in negotiations with the state in an attempt to reach an agreement. Gee, I wonder if part of that agreement is they'll build new prisons with federal tax dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say federal tax dollars? I mean the taxes you pay. And lastly, since I made reference to it, this is what the breakdown looks like in the Alabama State Prison Program. Black people make up roughly 28% of the population of the entire state of Alabama, yet represent 43% of the entire jail population and 54% of the state's prison population. So what does this mean for you, the average viewer at home, the fellow member of the working class? Well, number one, it means a certain portion of the federal taxes that you pay every year are now going to bail out the Alabama State Prison Program after that state purposely neglected it and spent no money on it for decades, while taking all those federal dollars and diverting them towards their Back the Blue Everybody Deserves an MRAP program. But more importantly, it shows that our entire prison system here throughout the United States of America is an utter and complete sham. We talk about prisons being a place where people can be rehabilitated, but we don't care about rehabilitating prisoners. We just want to lock them away and get them out of our neighborhoods, and then forget they exist. And part of forgetting that they exist is denying their humanity, spending no money on their basic needs, and letting a small sliver of the population, with the approval of the state, essentially beat and rape them for their own entertainment anytime they choose. And of course, as with most things states do when it comes to flexing their power and or making money, well, of course, this program falls disproportionately on the backs of non-white people. So, don't be surprised. This is just a snapshot of one state in the United States of America. And while I'm focusing on Alabama here, the problem isn't necessarily Alabama. The problem is how we look at and treat our incarceration system. And maybe if we spent a little more time creating policies and laws that didn't just immediately send people to prison and lock them away and throw away the key. Maybe if we had, I don't know, jobs programs, or we invested more in education or meeting the needs of people, well then there would be a lot more people who weren't doing crimes. And then all of these prison construction boondoggles wouldn't even be necessary. So thank you to all of those people and groups out there who keep shining a light on how shitty this system is on a national level from top to bottom. I appreciate you. Until next time, my name is James. I am from the internet, and I am out. Peace.